We are here today with Karl Franz Williams, owner of 67 Orange Street in Harlem, New York, and the Anchor Spa in New Haven, Connecticut. We're speaking with Karl today about his perspective as a Black business owner during the COVID-19 pandemic.
So I opened 67 Orange Street in 2008, December of 2008. And so we were right at the time of the first financial crisis. And one of the big differences then was there just wasn't money, So I talk about access to capital. We got open and, there wasn't enough money, and I couldn't get access to capital. I struggled to get the capital that I needed for years. And by the time I would actually ever get anything, it was less than what I needed because I needed it, 6 months ago or a year ago, whenever it did come in. And so, one of the things I found unique about this particular is that there's this sort of global recognition of an issue. And so there are, these programs, the PPP and the EIDL, are generally pretty, democratic in how they're being managed. It's credit score, it's, it's documentation. Now there are certainly really legitimate points about why that in and of itself does create issues for some entrepreneurs in Black communities. So when I talked about access to capital, if you have less access to capital and you're in one of these communities, you often have non-traditional banking relationships, and those non-traditional banking relationships make something like getting the PPP that much more difficult. We are seeing data that shows that that even the PPP and EIDL have not been getting to Black and brown entrepreneurs the way that it should be.
One of your restaurants is in Harlem, and how has Harlem been faring as a business community and as a restaurant hub over the past few months?
Harlem is a historically Black neighborhood. We still, it's become more diverse with time. You could say it's been, gentrified, but there's still a lot of Black-owned businesses in the area, and so when there's an economic recession, it tends to, or an economic situation. I don't know what this is going to be, a recession, a depression, where it'll ultimately fall out. We don't know, but something like this tends to impact. Whenever there's something of this magnitude, it tends to impact Black and brown communities disproportionately so. And the data is already showing that. So starting from the impact of COVID, where we saw a much greater mortality as well as infection rate amongst in Black communities. And then, adding to the fact that a lot of Black community folks were also frontline workers. So, they were working on some of these things. And you take the wealth disparity, the average white family in America has an average income of average net worth of 171,000 versus 17,000 for the average Black family. So you're starting from a much smaller amount of capital. There's tons of studies about access to capital, and there's substantially less access to capital for Black entrepreneurs. And then you add to that when there is a recession, it tends to hit harder and last longer. So you're working from a situation where you have less to start with. You're able to raise less to support you in these situations, and then you get, and then these recessions hit and they hit you harder. And then, you have to be prepared for not just a harder hit, meaning greater economic impact, more businesses closing, less access to capital, more sort of these economic issues happening, but then that these issues are going to stick around for longer. Mm-hmm. So one of the issues that started to flush out was that there were a lot of businesses, especially in phase one, and that did not get PPP funds. And, some of them weren't able to wait until phase two, to be able to make it, sorry, not phase two, the second round of PPP to even to make it. And, for those who did get PPP, oftentimes you're talking about a smaller staff. The amount of PPP you get is based on the number of employees that you've had. And so now we've got less money coming in for a harder impact that's going to last a longer time. So I've seen a lot of businesses around me close. There were 4 restaurants on the block that I'm on, and one is closed forever, for sure. There's a Chinese restaurant next to me that is limping along. we're open. And then there's an Ethiopian place that's next to me that also closed, and I don't know if they're going to reopen or not. They have not reopened to this point, and I don't see the owner around anymore, so I can't say what's going to happen there.
So, in addition to the government helping and changing these programs, the other thing we're hearing a lot about is investing in Black communities and restaurants. What to you is the importance of long-term investment in Black-owned businesses and communities, and what does that look like?
Investing in the Black community can start. Most people are saying, okay, well, so first of all, like the idea, if I'm going to write a check and send that, that's great. But that's a one-time fix, it's a Band-Aid. You do that, and you may have resolved some of your internal conflict about the issue, but you haven't solved the issue. You just Band-Aided it for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a systemic thing. It's a long-term thing. This is something that needs to be addressed in sort of a long-term manner. Any program that we do roll out needs to be thought of in a pandemic plus sort of way. So it's like pandemic plus 6 months to a year afterwards, whether it's a benefit, a cost reduction, or a cash flow or anything like that. They need to be thought of in terms of pandemic plus, and that just needs to be written into whatever it is. So, things like a month-to-month sort of approach. Right now, takeout cocktails in New York, or this law that allows for that, is continuing on sort of a month-to-month kind of thing. And running your business with that kind of uncertainty isn't great. So we can get something like that to be a pandemic plus, as an example. But when I was talking about how to invest, the idea is if you're investing along that platform that I talked about, access and recognition, then that goes a long way. So access can start as easy as looking at, your own organization, if you're a bar or restaurant owner, and looking at, who works for you. And if your organization doesn't match at least the population dynamics of your city or town or wherever you are, then that's an issue, because that's where the experience is developed, that will eventually lead to later bar and restaurant ownership, is working within a bar, learning how it's done, having opportunities to manage, to get that head bartender job, to lead a kitchen, things like that. So investing in the community is one, providing opportunities like that, taking your staff, our friends who are Black or brown, to key events where they can be seen and where their talents can be expressed. If you're in the media space, it's doing things like what you're doing here, interviewing me, interviewing Black entrepreneurs and giving them exposure to the broader community. All that is access, right? For writing stories, and pick your publication. You pick up any publication in the hospitality industry, and you flip through it 2 months ago, and you were hard pressed to find a Black or brown face. That's changed. Maybe in the last month, you see more of our faces on things just because of the Black Lives Matter movement. But again, that's access, because if you're reading about me, or I'm on TV, or I'm in the news segment, or whatever, now that exposure is going to drive people to my restaurant. It's going to help my business. It's going to help me grow overall. That's a huge investment in my community. It's not necessarily cash. And then it's recognition. So all of the organizations, there are lots of ways that bars and restaurants get recognized. They get added to top 10 lists, that are all throughout, just Google top 10 on any category, and you'll see a million different things come up. But it's things like lists, it's actual awards, Michelin, James Beard, it's festivals, Aspen, South Beach Food and Wine, whatever the case is. Like, there are these kind of things where Tales of the Cocktail, particularly for me in craft cocktail world, Tales of the Cocktail and the Spirited Awards is a huge example, a huge place where craft bar owners and bartenders are recognized. And I can remember sitting at the Spirited Awards for the last 10 years that I've been going to Tales, and I'm always largely disappointed in the huge lack of representation, and recognition of anybody of color. And so I mean, this is where, again, if the dynamics of anything like this don't match at least population dynamics, then there's a problem there. And that organization needs to look at itself and say, what's going on? What are we doing that's furthering the problem?